I have the enviable position of being in front of lunch and the keynote address. So we'll try to cut through a few slides, answer some questions, and we had a question earlier about our accessibility in terms of subsequent questions or dialogue after this meeting. The last slide of my presentation has my phone number and an email address. So please feel free to reach out to me. In my position, I interface with your chief auditor or audit directors at the institution. So a lot of times, if I can't answer a question or if it's an issue that's specific to an institution, I can have a relationship with your auditor and a conversation, and we can together chart a path forward. So happy to assist in any way. So just a little bit about our organization. Like most audit shops, I report functionally to our governing board and then administratively to the commissioner. So I have three sort of spheres of responsibility under my purview. So the one that's in red is the one, the reason it's in red is because it's most applicable to this audience. I have internal audit responsibilities and we do federal subrecipient monitoring, but compliance monitoring is the piece where we regularly interact with your institutions. So I'll delve into that one a bit more. In the 83rd legislative session, compliance monitoring was born. It actually came out of the agency's sunset process, and so the Sunset Review Commission recommended that a formal compliance monitoring function be established, and then ultimately the legislature was able to provide the resources to get that going. So we have two statutory areas that we interact with your institutions on, and so the first one is funds allocated. All of the state dollars that you heard being discussed earlier, the coordinating board is responsible for a number of those programs. Texas Grant, for instance, TEOG on the community college side, other academic grants. So all of those dollars that come to the coordinating board that then go to your institutions, that's one area that compliance monitoring is statutorily asked to look at. And so what we're doing is we're reviewing whether or not those funds are being used in accordance with the requirements. Are they being safeguarded? Are they being returned if they're not used? So there's rules and statute around each of those programs, and so we're really coming out just to make sure that that those rules and statutes are being complied with. So the second area for compliance monitoring where we interface with your institution, you heard an extensive discussion earlier about formula funding. And so what compliance monitoring is asked to do is, there was we were talking about the I&O formula and enrollments for all of the formulas, your student enrollment, the semester credit hours that are being taken by discipline within your institution. All of those things result in dollars being allocated to your institution. So what compliance monitoring has been asked to do statutorily is to go to the source of information. So each of your institutions has a student information system. You have enrollment processes. You have reporting processes as students matriculate. So we're looking to see, is the data that is being generated from that process that ultimately leads to the pie being divided, is that data good? Can the information be relied upon? So we actually, through our compliance monitoring work, we will come to your institution and take a look at the quality of the information, which a portion of our work is predicated on information security, information system controls. So you hear constantly, data breaches and things like that in our in society, and higher ed is no different. So there's a treasure trove of information. It's all subject to FERPA and other important requirements. We're looking to see, do you have at least the basics in place to protect that information? Because if the information is not protected, if we can't tell who has the ability to change it, are those changes being tracked, for example, we really then can't rely on the information that's being reported to the coordinating board, and that then subsequently drives the formula funding process. So that's the second area of emphasis. It's funds management for the dollars coming to your institution through the coordinating board, and then it's the veracity of information that gets reported to the coordinating board that is used for decision-making purposes, such as primarily formula funding. How am I doing on time here? Okay. So when we do visit your institution, we work very hard to not make it a surprise. Our compliance monitoring plan gets approved by our board each July, and so it's a matter of public record, so you can actually see as early as July whether or not your institution is listed on our schedule of work for the coming year. And then at the beginning of the year, we reach out to your institution's chief executive officer, and we try to copy the board chair, and we notify that institution. We say, hey, you're on our list of institutions. We'll be looking at program X or Y, and we'll be working with you to schedule a date that's mutually agreed upon to conduct our work. And then, the rest of it, we just, we follow auditing standards. We really work very hard to communicate to ensure that there aren't any misunderstandings. So we have sort of a multi-phased process where the information, the tentative conclusions or questions or issues, get batted back and forth several times before they would actually make it into a report that would, a final report that would ultimately come to your institution's CEO, chancellor, if it's part of a system, and governing board chair would all receive the results of our work. And we have, on occasion, actually been available to brief those bodies if there's a need to do so. But typically, it's just providing the report, and then we, of course, provide the report to our own board and to other stakeholders, such as the state auditor's office, governor's office, others. This is, again, in the interest of communication and transparency. I just wanted to show a slide. This is off of the coordinating board website. So if you look at I think it's under About Us tab on the front page, you can get to internal audit and compliance monitoring. So if you look down towards the bottom, well, you can look at a couple places. At the bottom, you can see compliance monitoring reports. So all of our final reports are actually posted on the agency website. So you can not only see information about your own institution, if you're wondering how, again, going back to that peer comparison, if you're wondering how your institution's result of a Texas grant audit compared to others, you would have the ability to go here and scan the list, because we do about 20, 25 projects per year, so it's pretty easy to scan the list and see if there might be others that you would want to see how they fared on their audit. You also see our internal audit and compliance monitoring plans as well, to see if your institution is on our list for the year. As a state institution of higher education, you're subject to Government Code Chapter 2102, which is called the Internal Auditing Act. So it requires a program of audit within your institution, and so it's part of the governance structure of the institution. It reports to the board, requires approval of board approval of a audit plan. All of it pretty standard within the internal audit profession, but that's where the definition of what's required for your institution. If you're ever wondering what your internal audit division would be required to follow, this is a significant source of where the requirements are defined. Other things, we've already had some mention, the state auditor's office, and they have a website they actually have, there's information there as well, just like I was showing you for our website, how you can see audit reports or audit issues. You can go to the state auditor's website, and they have a very useful search function within the audit report area. So if you were curious about intercollegiate athletics, for example, you could do a search within their website, and it would give you every state auditor report that mentions intercollegiate athletics or whatever topic you may be interested in. And then, of course, there's other players in this field, Department of Education, and other state or federal entities that might have the authority to look at your program. I left a link up here on the internal audit side. There's going back to the Internal Audit Act and just what each of your internal auditors are following. This is a link to a document about 20 questions that governing boards should ask of their internal audit function. And so they're questions such as whether or not your auditor has free and unrestricted access to the board. Are there regular meetings? Is there a dialogue? Can that dialogue occur outside of the dialogue with the chief executive officer? Things that really ensure or cement the independence of the function as it is supposed to be operating. So it's I found that the questions that are in that document are pretty useful questions for a governing board member. I think that brings me to the end. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.